And you're on.
Hi. Cool. Okay, so I'm gonna start, and I'm here as one half of a team, myself and Lucy Xiao Yu, who'll go next. We're in Hong Kong for just like 6 weeks as part of a design trust grant, but I'm not really gonna talk about what we're doing on that grant. I'm gonna talk about some other projects. So I am a creative technologist, an artist, and an activist, community organizer. Before that, I was a biologist in ecological science, and now I teach in an architecture department at Cooper Union. And I help oversee a lab called the Art, Architecture, Construction Engineering Lab there, which is basically a big digital fabrication computation lab across engineering, art, and architecture. So I'm trained in my background as an architect, and a bunch of the stuff that I'm going to show today is more related to that, but I do a lot of other work more related to computer science, machine learning, and some hardware development with embedded programming, hardware prototyping, stuff like that. Cool. So I want to frame that one of the things that makes me interested in fabrication and making is that it is always, in essence, a community building exercise. That making and fabricating is a way of articulating community and assimilation. And that happens in a way through the things that we build being a kind of material index of dialogue and translation. So I'm going to show two built projects, both of which took place in Nairobi. And then I'll show some other things, and I'll be really quick. So, in the sense that I want to start talking about making as a way in which people enter into dialogue with one another, and people enter into dialogue with materials. The things that we make are basically reflections of the conversations and the interactions that we have. And making is always a kind of intimacy between people and material, and between people and people. So this project starts with just a stack of CNC cut blue foam parts with no instructions, and by the end of the day, people have interacted with each other, transmitted how to put them together to make a kind of accretion. It's really just an installation that's a living archive of the interactions of people that happened prior. And so this is the kind of way I'm thinking of making as a dialogue of community expression. I'm co-founder of an architecture office called Hello Everything that's built work in Denmark, the US, and in Africa. And so this is a project that we did in a neighborhood in Nairobi called Kibera, but this is its final home. Its original home was in an exhibition in Denmark, and we were hired by the exhibition to build a pavilion, but we used the money from the exhibition to basically build a school and ship the project across the globe. So immediately, one context must be traversed into another one, and the community dialogue that happens between Denmark and Nairobi is dramatically different. And this is the kind of process of fabrication that I think is particularly interesting. It's political by its very nature. So an assembly once in Denmark and an assembly a second time in Africa. The sortation and indexing of the parts in one context versus another context. And in this circumstance, we are assuming that in one place, people are quite familiar with being able to use metrics and dimensional rulers and being quite proficient at decimal points with sig figs and things like that, and whereas in another, it's not as easy. So part of the basis is to encode the logic of the assembly into the parts itself, and to do this, we use color. So it's all basically a color matching game. And if you follow a color spectrum by color matching, you eventually build the whole project. It's obviously more complex than that, but in effect, that's basically what it is. So this is always this act of trying to translate one project between two different contexts, one in Scandinavia, the other in Nairobi. And I like to show these documents that are these field documents that were the things that were actually used to make it. So you don't have a digital model in sight. So these really fatigued, worn archives become my favorite part of the projects, because they're the things that actually are the vehicles of communication between people to make something happen. And they get sketched on and smeared up and stuffed into your back pocket. And this becomes, in a way, the entire brain or sort of choreography between people to organize how people relate to material to build something, right? So we try to find these common language and terms with which we translate between each other, between contexts, between humans and materials. And the work of Hello Everything is largely about exploring that. So architecture as a form of social engagement and social development. So that is a second example of a project that we did. So I'm gonna be actually really brief and just share a little bit about a community that I'm a co-founder of in Brooklyn, which is where I live. I live in New York, and it's called Soft Surplus, and it's kindred to Maker Bay. It is roughly 25 to 30 people who are all artists, creative technologists, designers. There's a bunch of biologists, choreographers, and computer scientists in there too. And so it starts in one moment here. This is in January 2018. New York is like so cold compared to Hong Kong, so it's just, and it's also, but it is kind of dirty like Hong Kong is, so it's a really cold and dirty starting point. And now I like to think of it as a total mess, and in a productive or kind of happy way. So this is my sort of next step in cultivating in my own practice what fabrication is that it's a way of building a platform or infrastructure for other people to make work. And so I like building platforms and the space within which ideas can be made. And to that tune, I think this offers a kind of stage with which people can try out things that don't quite have a vocabulary yet. I'm not so invested currently in bringing a project all the way to market, say, but more like what are those early synaptics, inklings that are happening that are really messy, that you don't quite have a language about. So I'd love to have spent the whole time talking about this, but I'm not going to. But I have a really strong interest in air and the atmosphere. And so I've been doing a series called Air Sessions at my space. This is with my students, with some designers out of Providence, Rhode Island called Newhouse. And we build passive solar balloons just to, as a way to kind of develop a more intimate relationship with air. And I read a really interesting passage that, you know, we talk about being land walkers and people walking on the land and we occupy the earth, but in fact only the bottoms of our feet are on the earth and we actually occupy the atmosphere. It's just like the 6 feet above the earth. So trying to develop a kind of community practice across generations, across different types of people, where we build instruments that explore and make ourselves more intimate with the kind of ecological context that we're a part of. This is called Air Sessions. I try to keep a low profile on the internet. If you want to see other developments in R&D that I'm working on, you can find my Arena page. And then here's my personal email, and then here's the email for the website for my office. Yeah, and on there's some other stuff for like a swarm robot system that I'm developing that I'm really excited about, and some kind of creative expeditions into GANs and machine learning as generative tools for story writing and stuff, amongst a bunch of other things. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to Lucy Liu. Thanks for hearing me out for 5-10 minutes. Thanks so much.
Similarly, we're here for a Design Trust grant, but also similarly, I'm not going to talk about that project today. I'm currently an artist and designer working in New York. My main gig is teaching. I teach drawing and digital representation. Most of my practice and work, I deal with digital representation and imaging technologies. So even though I'm trained in architectural design, most of my work currently is in what we would group under graphics or graphic work. So let's have fun trying to find a similar question. I'm going to start with a project called Props Paper. It's a graphics project that I started with my friend Matt. It's a weekly newspaper on contemporary image making in which we interview a different artist or designer or lawyer or writer about how they use images in their field. And from this project, it's not, we edit it, we curate it, we also design the whole issue with the individual we're interviewing. This is with an astrophysicist. And it's really a platform for us to understand the current landscape of imaging technology that's out there, that's beyond design. And a lot of the times we learn a lot from the people we interview just by the way they describe to us the different ways or limitations or challenges they have with the technologies that they're working with. We collaborate with nonprofit organizations, but also like this one, we collaborate with the Dutch Design Week to make a web app where it forced their image into a perspective of a room. So it's also an opportunity for us to explore different ways to image things and think about how, in terms of an interface, we can work with digital images now. And this is just something recent. We went to this fantastic show of the newspapers of Stand With HK at G20 here in Hong Kong, and I thought it might be appropriate to mention, because our main medium is newsprint, to see such a huge message be broadcast across the world via the medium of newsprint really struck me as a very meaningful and interesting one, just because there's so many ways to connect with people now, and to rely on such a traditional method is really inspiring. Most of my work deal with disjunctions that happen in digital imaging. So what you're seeing here is a project I did a few years ago on when Apple Maps just came out with their new map application. And in 2012, they didn't combine the map data that they had for a disputed island between Japan and China, and instead they duplicated it on their map. So instead of one island, they had two. And Google, they checked their data and realized that it's wrong, so they erased it, but they still left a little shadow. So here's a zoom in of like the shadow islands that they had.
Japan.
Yeah, it's Japan. And I saw this as an opportunity to think of the realities that we make through our digital images. So instead of drawing the one island, this is the contour lines that I culled from online information about the island. I just took this duplicated island as our new reality. So I had to make a series of drawings and animations that deal with the island not as one entity that's disputed, but just as two islands with completely different coordinates on Apple Maps. And as you know, having a digital map snafu results in stuff like this, where people try and mitigate the damage that has been done via a mapping problem. You can see like the little mascots are all trying to help here. And then in the case where you actually go to tour on the island in the digital map, you see Taiwan trying to stake a claim by pasting their flag onto the texture onto the island. So for me, I see problems or mistakes that happen in digital images as really a place to look into what's really going on, not only in our technology, but between our own interpersonal relationships. It's really the two countries are displacing the diplomacy to technology that's happening, that's making this happen, instead of trying to deal with the problem or geopolitical problems in human form. So then there's this weird faith that technology will work itself out and help us, save all the problems, but it still occurs. So here are my two islands and my interpretation of them. And so this is a similar project in looking at clouds. So I think there are I'm really interested in aspects of nature and methods that humans devise to represent nature, because it's our methods are what we are, and it's always a self-description of what we are thinking about and our techniques and technologies at hand. So I was using 19th century recipes that scientists and artists had developed to represent our skies and reinterpreting them through computational techniques. Oh, why is this all zoomed in?
It crops the
Yeah, it cropped everything.
Yeah.
Oh, well, you kept a very zoomed in version of my work.
Maybe you just do this. No? Oh, upper minus?
No, it's not that bad. It's not that bad.
You look really 20 pixels on each side.
It's okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, I just realized. But now you can see it much clearer. But then, yeah, so I use to reinterpret these techniques and see what we can learn from these methods. And a lot of the times it's to reveal the fragility of our interpretation of nature and our attempt to control nature in some systematic way. And with each new era, we have to devise new methods to understand our environment. So this is kind of where this project is leading. And I'm trying to build my own data set to,
Is that drawn by hand?
it's a combination of drawn by hand and post-processing. Okay, but I'm trying to make my own data set of images. I don't know, it's not coming properly. But anyway, to interpret what the recipes are for cloud drawing. So then, and to me, it's like a kind of like a Rorschach, because creating a data set is also kind of a mystical type of process, and there's like what goes in there and what comes out, and you don't not really know. And here's some student work that from the classes that I've taught. I taught at MIT in the Art, Culture, and Technology program, and currently I teach at RISD. I also teach drawing, but a lot of my work in my class is about how to interpret drawing as a new medium, and how do we integrate drawing as a fundamental aspect of design, and an aspect of design that we can really explore design questions through. So, so here are some drawing machines that my students created, some drawing instructions. We also do hand drawing, and in combination with digital software. And this is kind of what, I'm going to end with this because it's what's on my mind right now. These are maps of 3D bead craft. So like the little beady animals that you see on like street stalls. I think the map for it, or the instructions for it, is phenomenal, because in terms of an instruction to make an object, it is an unraveling of three-dimensional object onto a two-dimensional surface. But at the same time, trying to communicate a way to make something is always a challenge. And I think that having the object itself be the instruction is one way to do it, but also interpreting it into a two-dimensional form is another way. And that's kind of what I'm thinking about a lot lately. It's like how do you create instructional techniques for mediums that transcend different dimensions? That's it. That's all for me.
Do you and Austin share a question?
Well, that's up for you all to decide. You have to come up with it together.
Thanks so much.
Yes. The answer is yes. We definitely do.
Yes.
What do you think is the question?
I think that there's an interesting question about the way in which you translate different systems across contexts, and the way you either encode something as something that we've been talking about as a kind of dimensional reduction, like reducing the space of something as a way of translating it and communicating it. So how do you reduce the dimensionality of something to communicate something? Just kind of an abstract shared point. And another shared point is the kind of question of perception and intimacy of the environment, like of clouds and of the atmosphere in a kind of literal way. Like how do you perceive, depict, and engage air? Something that her and I have both worked on in various ways.
I think the most pointed thing maybe in our presentations is the instructional part of it, because it's not only in the encoding the material with knowledge, but also how to represent knowledge, and what knowledge do you represent. So I think that that's something about that translation is something we constantly talk about. Was it color? Is it by numbers? Is it by relationships of material next to each other? Or is it by two-dimensional flattening of a 3D object? And I think that that's a space that's really rich for discussion, but also is a place where you can really invent new ways of seeing things and making things. And also like the dimensional reduction thing, there's not only reduction, but like the multitude of dimensions that you can now imagine from a new way of seeing.
Thanks a lot. So who's gonna go next in the team?
You gonna go? Okay.
We have a donkey.
Do you want to plug your stuff in?
I got a USB-C. I forgot.
What did you have? Oh, dongle.
Yeah.
What's your file?
Sorry.
What's
Not Type-C.
Oh, USB-C.
Yeah.
But can you?
I can. Yeah.
Can you send it to me, or put it on the USB-C? No USB. How can you send it? Can you drop it to me?
Yeah. It's like on the.
Let me see that. Let's see there.
Oh, yeah, no. Easy.
There you go. Thank you. Actually, it's pretty fast.
No, we used to AirDrop. Actually, just the first time to see the AirDrop stuff.
Oh yeah.
Makes sense. No.
Fast.
Easy.
There you go.
No need of fucking something like that.
Yeah. So I did this. We did a presentation yesterday in City University of Hong Kong. So I'll kind of just use the same one. So I did it as G, who is also one of the organizers of this trip, this University of Tokyo. And I'm Artem. I'm at the I'm my PhD student right now at the, almost finishing at MIT. I'll talk about our like summer trips to China a little bit, like why we come every summer. It's been going on for like 7 years now. If just for context, we're in the Media Lab, so which is, at MIT. It's an interdisciplinary research department. There's 30 different groups, and everybody does different things from like electronics, biology, robotics, like everything. Also, a lot of designers, engineers. So, kind of in our lab, we usually do prototyping. So we do like small scale, like more complex prototypes. And on the other hand, we have factories which do a lot of the same device, same processes, or but on large scale, like making millions of things. So the goal of our trip is we want to bridge this gap to kind of for academic, for students, for designers, for engineers or artists in our group to also understand manufacturing. And also a lot of work we do, we need to scale it to make 100, maybe 1,000 of those prototypes. So a lot of research required this. If you're taking it out to the world or maybe doing a startup or doing a big user study. So we go to Shenzhen, which is, they say, the Silicon Valley of hardware. And why we go there is because there's a big ecosystem of like all kinds of factories, mostly focused on consumer electronics. So we built a lot of relationships over the years also with people, so they let us like play around with their machines, do like crazy things as well. So you have like, I don't know if you guys been there, like huge electronic market. So every store here you see it's a front of a factory. It's just a oops. So this is like a lot of very interesting place to go through. So we usually in this region between like Dongguan and Shenzhen, actually, that's where all the factories are. So so we did the first trip in 2013, and that was just factory tours. And Bani Huang, he organized it. He's also been involved like in other ones, and then we kind of changed every year, like our approach to the class. Like in the beginning, we were just like Bani gave us this device that we had to modify and manufacture, but he designed it, so it was kind of already. So we just did a little modifications, like plastic and some radio with a plastic and circuit board. Then after that, we decided to like change the way we do this program. So we actually what we did is just go to the factories and like instead of using the existing processes, we try to just kind of change them to try like completely different things using the existing machines. And we call this like hacking manufacturing. So we go to the factory and we try like to come up with something new like on the spot, kind of. So we didn't know what we were going to do before that. And in the last 2 years, like last year and this year, we did what's called like research at scale. So it's when students they already take their existing projects at the Media Lab or University of Tokyo in this case too, and they try to like maybe they have one prototype, but now they want to manufacture like a few hundreds maybe. So they need the to understand the mass manufacturing and how to do that. So we spend like in the end of the 1 month they should have some few hundred like things manufactured. So it goes like for learning, for them to learn, and also to improve the research as well and come up with the new things. So we usually have like 4 weeks in the summer, every summer, so typical syllabus, and then we like set up the workspaces in our like hotels or in the factory. So we buy all the tools, kind of mini lab, like mini like research lab. And this was from actually just a couple of days ago, just some pictures. We rented out this hotel room, just put all this equipment there, and the students just go there and work and stuff. So some of the projects I wanted to just talk a little bit about. So the hacking manufacturing, we worked with the fabrics, knitting factory and flexible PCB factory. So you can see those really big knitting machines, and you can program them. They're like CNC, so they're completely, you can do like really crazy things with the software. So we did a lot of sensors. We needed conductive fibers, like making like capacitive touch, also shape memory alloy, so you can change shape. So we, like one of the students, and some others, they published some. They got the cover of this magazine, 3D printing, additive manufacturing. Also, some students were like we were very interdisciplinary, doing like art projects. So this is the fabric was kind of the pattern of the fabric was based on the brain waves of the worker who was like using the machine at the moment. So on the EEG patterns, and also like we played around with flexible electronics. So we, like one of my projects, and G also made this robot that's like completely made on just flexible electronics, and we can add actuators. So everything was done in one factory. You don't need motors. You don't need to like have this complex assemblies. Much like cheaper, so you can make this. It moves with the pneumatic. As well as we have a shape memory alloy, just embedding it into the PCBs, mass manufacturing, like this method can be manufactured on a large scale. So we spent like 2 weeks, just going every day to this factory, like working there and just trying every day, like talking to the people who work there, like trying getting them to do things for us. And this is some of the processes that there's a little bit of like which is so that's how we were making it, and then we give it the line. And then the other approach is research at scale, where we take the existing projects. So one of like example of my work, I was interested to make this material, which is like a tape, but it's actually electronic tape, like some using flexible electronics. So I had to like scale it. I wanted to make like 100 meters in this. You can't really like do it at the lab, so you have to go to China. So I went and I put like shape sensors, so you can, for example, see its shape. So you can also cut it, and like in this example, like you can add it to different materials. So it's also cuttable. So it's like idea is to make inexpensive smart materials as well. And just
Good, good, good.
yeah, and some other projects like Judith, she was making this necklace which releases the smell based on your biosignals. So like if you're stressed, it can release like a smell which will calm you down, for example. So she was manufacturing this device, which is quite complex. Electronics, Bluetooth, like plastic things. So she was able to make like 100, and now she's using it for a lot of like user studies, giving it to other universities, like so they can also study, use it for research. Another project was making gears, like one of the students from Tangible Media group, he was making like very specialized gears. So you can buy them, so we had to find like a specialized gear factory to make this like curved gears. And we got like a whole box of them. So hopefully he's doing a lot of work now on this project. And one of Chi projects, circuit stickers. She started was one of the streets and then it became a company. So this is putting circuit stickers like on the copper. So it's also using flexible electronics, as you can see here. It's how you would use it. So you have those stickers. So they had to modify the process as well so they run like a crowd funding campaign. Made this the company. So there was part of her PhD thesis doing all those workshops using this. And I mean, it's also, you probably guys have seen it. It's like it's a product that you can buy. And it's a lot of interesting things came out with it. And I'll just keep this part of this. So yeah, I mean, so we kind of like thinking how to we want to scale this, or how we can give this experience to like other people, not just the students in our lab or like University of Tokyo. Establishing relationships with the factories, like more relationships, finding like very interesting factories. There's so many like cool things there. We can like establishing some kind of like open factory residency program, so people can go there and experience this. They have some ideas, some project they want to scale. How can we like do this, and then like how the manufacturing is rapidly changing. You can see now like in the news, all those with the U.S. and the tariffs. We want to see how we can keep it relevant. It's such an interesting field.
Do you have one more book, or this is it?
Okay, Tokyo University,
That's all including.
all including.
Okay, so all sound there.
Okay, introduce it.
Okay, どうぞ。HDMI?
HDMI, okay.
Okay, どうぞ。
Here's the HDMI, you can hear. Okay. BI is Okay, talking about myself and my community and my works overview. I'm Takasu, Japanese, and work in Japanese company, but current my works in Shenzhen. I'm a resident in Shenzhen in these 2 years. I'm a co-founder of Nicotech Shenzhen organization, and I sometimes support Maker Fair Singapore and Maker Carnival Shanghai. I went to over 50 Maker Fair participated. I mean most experienced person about the Asian Maker Fair. Sometimes I talk about the Maker movement in China. Sometimes in Chinese. 我学习中文了。All Maker is a very different and all wonderful. This is a very American style, like a very making the hacking the big car to making the robot and doing these things. But in Bangkok, it's making the more Thai style, it's making some LED, across the people, across the. I strongly believe all makeup fair is all different and all wonderful. That's the reason why I explore the many makeup fairs. And my company is a Sweet Science, Japanese company. We selling the DIY tool like a Spark One and Seed Studio. And my main role for the job for salary is finding the new partner from around the world. That's the reason why I went to the almost 100 times a year to flying the airplane and to go 50-60 mega fair per year to checking the events. My newest partner is coming from a good motor driver from Cyclone, Malaysia, and the other one is M5 stock Shenzhen, China. We six size little invest to M5 stock to for more deeply collaborate. And currently my partner is also coming from Philippines and also coming from the Bangkok. In makeup fair is of course quite broad. And also Euro and the US is also important place. US have a Spark One and Ada fruits, and Euro have the Arduino and the Raspberry Pi and also the microbit. Yes, that's the reason why it's still around in the world. My community non-profit organization Nicotech Shenzhen is a non-profit community. I organizing the volunteers 3 years, 8 times, around over 200 people. And current our Facebook is over 3,000 people. And 4 books published in Japan. And monthly update email about 2,000 Japanese and 500 international guys. Like this one. Maybe only monthly, but I often call my update to English and Japanese. This is last year, 2018 school maker fair in Nanshan, Sheko. The main part of main organizer is James, the statement. Yes, it is. And I write a report in Japanese and also English. The Segu is a center of the building in Far area. And in this Segu building, 12th floor, we have an office. And my co-working place office is supported by several sponsors like A&B, Denso, famous company office in Shanghai. Japan Denso, Shanghai branch. And the Shanghai branch supports us. And one company, Genesis and Sweet Science also support us. And we, Nicotech Shenzhen community, is supposed to making hardware, making product by your time, not to a company. Like hobby times making a product, hobby times multiple product. That's the reason why I have interest to how to make the scale. That's the reason why I this time to support to the Tokyo and MIT students activity in Shenzhen. Japanese makeup pro indie hardware sales number is grown rapidly, 5 times bigger than 4 years ago, still growing. And also me and Sweet Science is organizing the Indie Hardware Festival in Japan. This is my last fair in Japan, last February. I organized the Indie Hardware Festival, 46 indie hardware maker, hobbyists, and over 200 participants in 3 years, including Zichi. He bought many of the circuit board in that event. If you come to Japan, I organize again this style of activity in the next February. Because February is we have free. No activity in China. That's the reason why we organize the event in February. Junjie. And making maker culture exchange is another my purpose. This is my also non-profit, very small event, dance party for geeks by the geeks of the geeks. We need more making DIY music stuff, DIY LED combined to the small dance club culture. Every summer I organize a small event around only 100 people in Akihabara, Tokyo. This is my first time event in 2014, and I invited 2 people from Shenzhen, China, Kevin Low and Eric Pan. And Eric Pan is having a huge interest to our mega party.
Next mega club, next club in Shenzhen. Welcome to Shenzhen next June.
He is a CEO, Eric Pan. And he, keeping the promise, he invited our team to Shenzhen. I organizing the huge dance party in Shenzhen like here. This is Nanshan, front of the Tencent headquarters. He hired a huge live house, and we're doing the huge dance event in the 5-hour in end part of the Mega Fair Shenzhen 2015. This is a team from Japanese. They are team from Seoul Studio. This is the last part of Mega Fair. They finished the whole job. That's the crazy dancing. And people from US and Brazil. And they are coming from Taiwan. You know the Monica. He joined the Seoul Studio later after this party. Yes, and also my friend Naomi Wu, a very famous maker called Sexy Cyborg, also well known the travel maker and the Make Magazine's the cover page. And she interviewed with the Make Magazine. She told my first farewell project was the Maker Fair after party in 2015. That party. My activity is bring to inspire other maker in Sexy Cyborg. That's the reason why we become a friend. And I still organizing the small beer party in Shenzhen. Sometimes Naomi also coming here, and we should go drinking together. One old guy is coming from. It's a very difficult to organize, difficult to understand because of 83 years old Japanese glass company guy CEO come to Shenzhen and drinking 24 years young Chinese girl who making some lot of LED, and one guy from Malaysia, he coming from Hong Kong, and also a 43 years old Japanese guy making a group photo. That's the reason why I prefer in Shenzhen making sometimes magic in there. And also another great hacker, Bunny Fan, sometimes joins our party, and we have a relationship a long time. Now we publishing his books, The Hardware Hacker, translated in Japanese, just published already at the last autumn, the 2018 October. I published his books in Japan. That's the reason my name is here, the translated. Sometimes I writing the books in Japan, more explain what is a maker, how maker it works, how maker space and maker fair is a very good things, can be change the world, mostly can change your lives. My life is also totally changed before maker fair or after maker fair. That's the reason why I'm wondering that maker fair is good, maker fair is nice, maker fair is good for the people to speak to everywhere. How it works to make a space. My friend Ricky Artem gave a good message for me. So please go with your impulse, explore, go out to find cool things, play with cool projects. See what works for you, see what doesn't work for you. Doesn't work is more important. If you need something hate, this is more important for you. Please share what works and what doesn't work with others, so may have an opportunity to learn from your experience, just as have you been learning from experience of others. That is how things grow, how you grow. So please go out and grow. This is a very good message. I often using these things at the end of my presentation. And I got to the makerspace passport from him. I bring over 30 or 40 makerspace around the world. And please give the sticker for the Maker Bay. This one is previously 2014. Yes, in the No Yauton, the before prices, and I got the same sticker from the Caesar already. Yeah. Today I need another one to behind the two stickers. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thanks so much for sharing so much energy there. Yeah. So now we kind of go into the phase 2. And then we turn around the camera, and now it's the time for everybody to join the conversation.
Yes, yes.
Unfortunately, I have to go, but Chiki will kind of, how do you say, facilitate the conversation, making sure everybody gets to speak. So I'm sorry I have to go, but thank you so much for sharing. Thanks a lot.
Oh, and we should take a group photo with
Oh,
you.
yes.
And I